Most women were never taught what it truly means to be a woman. They were taught how to behave like one, to soften their voice, to cross their legs, to not take up too much space. They were handed scripts, not truth. Taught performance, not presence. Told to chase worth through obedience and appeal. But the truth, the terrifying, liberating, soul-splitting truth, is that being a woman isn't a costume you wear or a checklist you complete. It's not a collection of traits passed down like heirlooms. It is a path. And you must choose it every single day. To walk the path of the woman is to descend into the underworld of your own soul and come back bleeding but sovereign. It is not about becoming what pleases others. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. In the archetypal psyche, the feminine is not simply the mother or the maiden. She is also the witch, the warrior, the priestess, the wild huntress who runs with wolves. She does not beg for space in the story, she is the storm that rewrites it. And yet, so many women remain trapped in the echo chamber of the persona, that outer mask worn to survive, to be liked, to not cause trouble. That persona may be polite. It may be well-spoken. It may even be applauded. But it is not alive. The woman who chooses her path wakes up one day and feels the raw, electric ache of her own soul. She hears the whisper behind the noise, the one that says this isn't it. Not the way she pleases, not the way she performs, not the way she constantly folds herself to be digestible. She sees the subtle violence of her self-abandonment, every time she bit her tongue, every time she smiled when she wanted to scream, every time she made herself small to make someone else feel big. And she begins to ask, what if I stopped apologizing for being everything I am? To take the path of the woman is to leave behind the mythology of pleasing and enter the wilderness of being. Jung called it individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pure, but whole. To integrate the shadow, the rage, the hunger, the grief you were told to bury. To meet the parts of you you've exiled and say, you belong to me. Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen only the fragments the world reflected back? The girl who had to earn her love. The woman who had to prove her softness. The version of you molded by need, not essence. What would happen if you shattered that mirror and began to see with the eyes of your soul? The truth is, the path of the woman is not paved in roses. It is carved through thorns. It requires the death of everything false. It demands that you stop performing and start becoming. That you stop begging for validation and start embodying your truth, even if your voice trembles, even if no one claps, even if it costs you comfort. Because there comes a moment, inevitable, unrelenting, when the soul refuses to be silenced. When she will no longer let you stay in relationships that diminish you. When she rips off the mask and demands that you stand naked in your truth. That you feel all of it, the ache, the longing, the anger, the power. This is not weakness. This is initiation. You do not become a woman by reaching a certain age. You do not become a woman by fitting into someone else's ideal. You become a woman the moment you choose yourself, fiercely, unapologetically, over and over again. And this choice is not made once. It is made daily. In the quiet hour before dawn, when you rise to meet yourself in silence. In the moment you speak a boundary you were taught to fear. In the stillness after heartbreak, when you refuse to betray yourself to be loved. You are not here to be convenient. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to become. The woman who chooses her path does not emerge fully formed. She is forged, in silence, in fire, in the places no one sees. She begins as an echo of what others needed her to be, the good girl, the helper, the muse. She learns early that approval tastes sweeter than truth. That silence earns safety. That beauty buys affection. But in chasing safety, she trades her sovereignty. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the real self slips beneath the surface. until the rupture. It is often subtle at first. A restlessness beneath the skin. A rising discomfort in the roles she once played with pride. Then, something snaps. Perhaps he stops calling. Perhaps the career she built becomes a gilded cage. Perhaps she wakes one morning and the reflection in the mirror looks like a stranger wearing her smile. Whatever the catalyst, the result is the same. The woman finally sees the cost of her own compliance. And something ancient begins to stir. She stops smiling on command. She starts saying no without explanation. She steps back from relationships that demand her emotional labor while offering none in return. And suddenly, people say she's changed. That she's cold. That she's difficult. But she's not cold, she's conscious. She's not difficult, she's done. There is a violence to awakening, not the kind that wounds others, but the sacred, inner violence that tears down illusions. The woman begins to dismantle everything that was built on self-denial. She starts with the softest parts, the people-pleasing, the self-sacrifice, the habitual shrinking. Then she goes deeper, into the ancestral wounds, the generational scripts, the trauma that lives in the body like a ghost. This is not a gentle unraveling. It is war. And yet, she does not fight to dominate. She fights to reclaim. Not just her time or her body, but her essence. The essence buried beneath conditioning and culture. The essence that never needed to prove, only to be. For too long, women were taught that power is harsh and softness is submission. But she learns, through blood and breath, that true power is presence. That softness can be a sword. That stillness can be a revolution. Have you ever felt the sacred rage of a woman who remembers herself? It is not chaos, it is clarity. It is not destruction, it is rebirth. She no longer seeks to be chosen. She chooses herself, and in doing so, becomes unshakable. To walk the path of the woman is to confront every lie you've inherited, that your value is in your looks, that your worth is tied to your usefulness, that love must be earned through suffering. These are not truths. They are cages. And the keys were in your hands all along. The masculine within her, the inner animus, as Jung called it, awakens, not as an oppressor but as an ally. She no longer seeks a man to complete her. She unites her own inner opposites, the wild and the wise, the fierce and the tender, the shadow and the light. From this sacred inner marriage, she rises whole. And when she meets a man, she does not collapse. She does not contort. She does not bleed her essence to win affection. She meets him standing, not begging. Because she knows, a man is not her salvation. He is a mirror, a companion, a reflection of her own depth. And if he cannot meet her there, she will walk alone, not because she is cold, but because she is clear. The woman who chooses her path does not chase. She does not perform. She does not explain her fire to those who fear being burned. She walks. She breathes. She becomes. There comes a moment on the woman's path when the silence grows louder than the noise. When the world's applause, the likes, the longing for external confirmation, all begin to feel hollow. She no longer wants to be seen, she wants to see. Not just herself, but the world as it truly is, without filters, without fantasies. This is the descent into the underworld of consciousness. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow, the dark, unconscious part of the psyche where the unacceptable, the repressed, and the forgotten dwell. For the woman walking her path, this descent is not a detour. It is the rite of passage. You may feel it too, quietly, secretly, that pull toward the parts of yourself you were taught to shame. The hunger for freedom, the sharpness of your tongue, the desire to walk away and never explain. These are not flaws. These are fragments of your wholeness, waiting to be reclaimed. She meets her own darkness not with judgment, but with reverence. She does not seek to destroy the shadow but to dance with it, to listen to what it came to teach her. that her rage was never irrational, that her need for space was never selfish, that her loneliness was not a weakness but a signal calling her back to herself. To meet the shadow is to strip away every false identity until only truth remains. And truth, as it turns out, is not always pretty, but it is always powerful. This inner journey changes her posture, her gaze, her very presence. She no longer enters rooms looking for approval. She walks in with the knowing that she belongs, not because anyone invited her, but because she is. She stops asking, "Do they like me?" She starts asking, "Do I feel like myself when I'm here?" And with that, the great sorting begins. The woman on the path begins to release what no longer reflects her truth. The friendships that revolve around her self-sacrifice. The men who love her reflection but fear her depth. The family roles that script her into obedience. She lets them go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Some will call her selfish. Others will call her broken. But she knows it is not her job to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding themselves. The Stoics taught that a woman's power lies not in what happens to her, but in how she chooses to meet it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And so, she stops trying to control outcomes and starts mastering her responses. She no longer gives her peace away to those who weaponize guilt. She no longer trades her joy for proximity to people who fear her transformation. Because she has learned the sacred art of self-containment. It is not isolation. It is integration. She no longer spills her energy to be validated. She holds it, tends it, knows that her inner world is her sanctuary. And if someone wants to enter, they must first meet her at the level of her self-respect. Do you feel that shift within you too? That quiet rebellion of the soul? That refusal to keep offering yourself in pieces just to feel whole? It's not a phase. It's not a crisis. It's the beginning. The woman who chooses her path is not angry, she is awake. She is not arrogant, she is anchored. She is not cold, she is conscious. She does not apologize for her clarity. She does not dilute her truth for comfort. She does not chase what depletes her. She simply stands. Not above others, but within herself. And from that place, all things become possible. As the woman deepens into her path, something sacred begins to unfold, a quiet, seismic return to her own authority. Not the kind of authority handed down by external validation or inherited roles, but the innate knowing that lives in her bones. She begins to trust her body as a compass, not a project. Her intuition becomes louder than her conditioning. And the voice that once whispered, "Is this okay?" now resounds as, "Is this true for me?" This is the reclamation. She no longer seeks to fit in. She begins to belong to herself. What once felt terrifying, saying no, standing alone, not being chosen, now feels like sacred practice. Like a devotion to her own becoming. Because the woman walking her path knows, being misunderstood is not a tragedy, it's a consequence of choosing depth over performance. This evolution frightens some. Especially those who once depended on her compliance. The friends who relied on her to be the caretaker. The lovers who adored her as long as she remained small. The systems that only work when a woman forgets her worth. They begin to tremble when she stops performing and starts embodying. And so, tests come. The universe sends old temptations wrapped in familiar faces. Invitations back into the roles she has outgrown. The ex who returns with polished apologies. The job that flatters her ego but starves her spirit. The friend who only reaches out when they need rescuing. But she sees it now, clearly, ruthlessly, without the fog of self-abandonment. Not every opportunity is meant to be accepted. Not every person is meant to walk beside her. Not every story is hers to carry. She no longer chooses based on obligation. She chooses based on alignment. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, not just becoming different from others, but becoming distinctly yourself. Integrating the unconscious, reconciling the opposites, and stepping into the center of your own psyche. The woman who walks this path becomes sovereign, not because she has no wounds, but because she has befriended them. Have you felt this shift inside yourself? That moment when your pain stopped being something to hide and started being a source of wisdom? When the very things that once broke you open a deeper truth? You are not broken. You are breaking open. And from this opening, the real feminine emerges, not the caricature of femininity sold to you through fear and fantasy, but the primordial feminine. She who creates, she who destroys, she who holds the void without collapsing into it. The feminine that is not here to entertain, but to evolve. She may wear lipstick or she may not. She may mother children or she may mother revolutions. Her essence cannot be captured in aesthetics. It is not the length of her hair, or the tone of her voice, or the softness of her curves. It is the presence in her gaze. It is the truth in her silence. It is the fire in her refusal to betray herself. She becomes the kind of woman who walks into a room and shifts its frequency, not through performance, but through presence. People feel her before she speaks. They sense her boundaries without her having to announce them. Because she has done the inner work. Because she has walked through her own fire and come out unburned but illuminated. She no longer confuses attachment for love. She no longer conflates chaos with chemistry. She no longer mistakes intensity for intimacy. She knows the difference now. She no longer tries to fix men who fear her power. She no longer edits herself to become palatable. She no longer explains her essence to those who only want to consume it. She does not chase. She chooses. There is a stillness that lives in the center of a woman who has chosen herself enough times. A calm that cannot be disrupted by rejection, nor shaken by praise. She is not indifferent, she is free. Because when a woman reclaims her path, she no longer orients her worth around being desired, needed, or understood. She no longer negotiates her identity for approval. She no longer builds a home in the heart of a man who doesn't know how to hold himself, let alone her. She becomes sovereign, not in defiance, but in remembrance. Remembrance of what? Of her sacred essence before she was shaped by the hands of others. Before the world called her too much, too sensitive, too strong, too wild. Before her softness was taken for submission and her silence mistaken for consent. Before she learned to shrink to survive. Now, she expands. And in that expansion, she feels everything more deeply. The grief of all the selves she had to let die. The ache of outgrowing spaces she once called home. The loneliness of walking paths where no maps exist. But also, the fierce joy of coming back to herself. The bone-deep peace of no longer performing. The quiet thrill of trusting her own soul over someone else's opinion. This is not the easy path. But it is the only one that leads to truth. And truth, for the awakened woman, becomes a way of living. Not an idea, not a brand, not a posture, but a practice. Every day, she chooses to walk in alignment. She chooses the slow yes over the fast approval. She chooses the hard boundary over the hollow connection. She chooses what nourishes, even if it doesn't impress. Her compass is no longer comparison, it is coherence. And because of this, she becomes deeply magnetic. Not in a performative way, but in the way nature is magnetic, wild, unapologetic, untamed. She no longer lures with false light. She radiates with inner clarity. And those who are meant to meet her there, in that vibration of truth, will. Not because she chased, but because she called them in with the frequency of her embodiment. You may feel the pull to stop performing, to stop fixing, to stop begging, to start living, to trust that what is real will stay, and what is false will fall away. To know that your power has never been in your ability to hold it all together, but in your willingness to let go of what was never yours to hold. When she meets love now, she doesn't collapse. She doesn't over-explain. She doesn't strategize to become more wanted. She meets love whole. And if love cannot meet her in her fullness, she walks away, not as a wound, but as a woman who will not betray herself for connection. This is not detachment rooted in fear, it is detachment rooted in reverence. She reveres her own energy, her own time, her own silence. She knows that every yes must be paid for in presence. And so she is intentional. With her words, with her body, with the spaces she enters. She no longer throws pearls at the feet of those who trample truth. She no longer entertains the illusion that she must earn love through endurance. She is not a performance. She is a presence. This woman does not argue for her worth. She does not justify her standards. She does not defend her becoming. She lives it. And in doing so, she gives other women permission to do the same. She becomes a living mirror, not of perfection, but of possibility. The possibility of being fully, fiercely, freely herself, without apology, without explanation, without dilution. She is the woman who once doubted everything, and now doubts nothing but the lie that she is not enough. She is not waiting to be saved. She is not afraid to be seen. She is not here to play a role. She is here to be real. And so, the path comes full circle, not to the girl she once was, but to the woman she was always meant to be. No longer does she chase peace in the eyes of a man who cannot meet her depth. No longer does she betray her silence to maintain the comfort of others. No longer does she fight for a place at a table that was never built for her soul. She builds her own. From the ashes of the stories that told her she was too much or not enough. From the sacred ground of every heartbreak that cracked her open instead of closing her. From the fire of every time she chose her truth over their approval. This is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of her return. To herself. To the voice beneath the noise. To the knowing beneath the performance. To the stillness beneath the striving. You see, a woman doesn't become powerful when the world tells her she is. She becomes powerful when she no longer needs the world to tell her anything at all. She no longer seeks to define her femininity, she embodies it. In the way she walks, in the way she speaks, in the way she doesn't speak. In the way she chooses to respond instead of react. In the way she holds her pain like a chalice and drinks from it until it turns into medicine. Every choice she makes now is sacred. Not because she's perfect, but because she's present. Present to her own desires, her own limits, her own pulse. She no longer waits for someone to crown her. She remembers that she was born with the crown, it just took time to stop handing it to others. To walk the path of the woman is to reclaim the sacred contract with life itself. To live open, even when it hurts. To choose truth, even when it costs. To stand alone, even when it aches. To burn the masks, even when they made her feel safe. And to love, deeply, wildly, wisely, but never again at the expense of her own soul. This love she gives now is not a transaction. It is a transmission. A frequency. A vibration of wholeness. She does not pour from depletion. She overflows from devotion. She does not attach to outcomes. She dances with alignment. She does not plead to be chosen. She chooses. Because this woman has walked through her shadows. Because this woman has touched her own divinity. Because this woman has seen who she is, beneath the fear, beneath the noise, beneath the names they gave her. And she has remembered, she was never a role to be played. She was a force to become. A frequency to return to. A path to walk every single day. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.